The Tech It Up Talk podcast aspires to educate, inform, and inspire educators from teachers to school leaders on tips, tools, and resources to support the integration of technology into classroom instruction.
You ready? Here we go.
You're listening to Tech It Up Talk with Dr. Mac, your host with the most passion for supporting educators from teachers to school leaders with the integration of technology into instruction. In this episode of Tech It Up Talk, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Kris Tatiossian, founder and creator of CRISPR Classroom, joining me in a discussion on stimulating student inquiry in science. Dr. Kris is a scientist by training and has worked in top pharmaceutical companies developing therapeutics with advanced genetic technologies. Her specialties include stem cell biology, CRISPR gene editing, and molecular genetics. As creator of CRISPR Classroom, Dr. Kris and her team develops programs and mentorship opportunities for K-12 students so that they can better understand and experience what it's like to become a scientist, in which they work to promote three tenets: content knowledge, hands-on lab training, and job awareness. Her goal is simple: inspire a love for research and discovery and raise awareness of biotech industry opportunities. And I have the pleasure of having her here on the Tech It Up Talk podcast to share her knowledge and passion with us. So I would like to give a warm welcome to my special guest today, Dr. Kris, founder and creator of CRISPR Classroom.
Hey, Dr. Mac.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, I'm super excited to have someone so smart and a research scientist on with us today that's going to really bless us and also share opportunities on how we can provide more opportunities for our students.
Absolutely.
And so it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Can't wait to get started.
Well, the goal of this episode is to discuss stimulating student inquiry and interest in science, so your knowledge and your expertise can really help better inform educators and educational leaders to help bring awareness around incorporating revolutionary science to extend the walls of the classroom. So, as a research scientist, why do you feel it is important to foster student interest in STEM fields of study?
Oh, that's a great kickoff question, Dr. Mac. I think that one of the most important features in stimulating student inquiry in STEM, and let me break it down, of course, science, technology, engineering, math. At its basis, technology, engineering, and math are somewhat similar because they are math-based. Science really kind of takes a left track into biology, where oftentimes you are not math-focused. And the differences between some of these technologies particularly have to do with their application of the scientific method. So the scientific method is a key mental framework that can be applied even beyond science disciplines for complex problem solving. So it is absolutely imperative that we supply our students the knowledge of what the scientific method is, how it works, and the diversity of situations in which it can be applied even beyond science. And so I think that is one of the absolute main reasons that we have to stimulate student inquiry, particularly in science and the scientific method, such that when they grow up into their careers, they can apply this critical thinking framework, regardless of whether they're a researcher, marketing specialist, business developer, social media manager, honestly, entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, I'm constantly using the scientific method to test and retest market opportunities, customer needs. And so that, I think, is the absolute basis, the knowledge and the ability to apply the scientific method.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, okay, Dr. Kris, now I have a background in science, chemistry specifically, but I would like for you to break down CRISPR technology. So can you explain to us what is CRISPR technology and how is it revolutionizing our world around us?
I mean, yeah, this is an absolutely amazing question that I love to talk about. How long is this podcast session? I can go on to this for about 5 hours, and I have done so in my online classes. So CRISPR is a revolutionary genetic biotechnology that allows us to, are you ready for this? To rewrite DNA.
Wow.
That means we can rewrite biology with this technology. Of course, it has its limitations, and we tend to highlight both the possibilities and the problems through our content and classes. But at the base, CRISPR is our technology that we have discovered to be able to rewrite biology. And it is revolutionizing our world, honestly, in so many different facets. Let's talk about therapeutics for one moment. The possibility to truly be able to cure genetic diseases that previously we've only been able to treat chronically. For example, sickle cell disease. An individual is born, they have one mutation, a single mutation in their entire genome, and they live in pain. They have these life-threatening crises. They have to rush to the emergency room for blood transfusions, and that is the extent of their entire life. It will continue. But now with this CRISPR gene editing technology, we can go in, we can correct their DNA and potentially provide a real long-lasting one-shot cure. This is actually in clinical trials and is already helping what seems to be cure some patients of sickle cell disease. And CRISPR's revolution does not end in therapeutics, not just with sickle cell disease. It continues into HIV, cancer, type 1 diabetes, and the list goes on. And beyond therapeutics, it's being used to basically being applied in to combat climate change through de-extinction programs. For example, bringing back the woolly mammoth as one theory to maintain kind of classical ecosystems like up in the north, climate change, biofuels, rewriting the genetic code of algae to be able to produce more efficiently different biofuels, agriculture, being able to modify our crop varieties such that they are heat, insect, drought resistant. So CRISPR, in its revolution, and the reason it won the Nobel Prize is because the technology is quite literally world-changing in so many different facets of our life.
Oh my goodness. Like, I can definitely see how that would just be of interest, just to rewrite DNA. That would like really spark interest in our students, especially like giving a scenario to a student and bringing in the writing facet to literacy, and them trying to maybe explain or even create or think through like what that could be. It's such a great writing prompt. I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Fascinating.
I mean, writing prompts are just the start. Students are already loving to learn about this CRISPR technology. And, just with those different applications that I mentioned, you can see how this technology can basically be taught in classrooms in so many different sections of the education. You can bring it up when you're learning about DNA or, the climate crisis or, energy production. It doesn't matter what you're teaching. I promise there is some way to incorporate CRISPR knowledge into that.
Wow. And so you mentioned a few of these already. So where can educators kind of incorporate this? So I heard biology, DNA, or any other sciences that an educator in a K-12 space could incorporate CRISPR?
Yeah, I mean, I think a better question is where can they not incorporate CRISPR? Pretty much anything biological that you teach, there can be an easy and direct link to CRISPR science, which is in part our creation of CRISPR Classroom, such that we can support these educators to have the content to be able to weave this type of cutting edge science. Like, I'm talking about the science that's happening like right outside these podcast doors, like right now in the laboratories, to be able to empower those teachers to very easily turnkey, plug and play, include that content into their classrooms and connect it with most likely the next generation science standards, the standards of national curriculum that many educators across the US are currently using. I know Texas has some special programs that are specific to Texas in the way that they promote student engagement and their standards, and it fits fantastically within the Texas standards as well.
All right, it's time for Get Your Tech Together. So we're going to get our tech together with CRISPR Classroom today. What is CRISPR Classroom specifically?
Yeah, great question. CRISPR Classroom is an education technology company where we provide content to people in general, but with a focus on our students and our kids. Currently, we are focused on ages of middle school through high school, as well as some college content where, again, we empower these educators with this content to be able to have them weave it throughout their lesson plans, and most importantly, tie the kind of basic biological concepts that they are teaching their students to real world application and examples. And that's kind of one tenet of what CRISPR Classroom works on, this empowering educators with our content. The second, and I think that I'll highlight, the educators that we worked with so far absolutely love this program, which is our Meet a Scientist program, where we connect real life professional scientists to educators such that they can introduce them to their students in their classrooms. And in both of these ways, through the content and the Meet a Scientist program, students are, is it corny to say inspired to actually go on and learn more about science, because they understand that the basics that they're learning in their biology classes, the basics. What is DNA? What's the central dogma of biology? How does RNA work? Seemingly irrelevant concepts that you'll never again use in your life, we showcase to them that by knowing this knowledge, you can actually have a fantastic career. And here are the people who have that career right in front of you.
Wow. And so what inspired the creation of CRISPR Classroom?
Oh yeah, I kind of fell into it. To be perfect, I know I created it, so how can you create something that you've fallen into? But for some reason, when you do things in your life, sometimes it just feels like destiny. Oh, I don't mean to sound so corny. I said inspire students' destiny, but it's so true. I grew up in a family of educators. My mom is a lifelong teacher. She's now currently a principal, and I have about 5 or 6 cousins who are teachers. And when I was getting my PhD, one of my favorite parts about graduate school was actually mentoring. We had a partnership program with the high school down the street. So I don't know, in a way, my life set me up to love education and mentorship. And then, this pandemic changed a lot of lives. And during this pandemic, it really had me reevaluate, like, at the end of this, life that I've been granted, what do I want to have written about me? What do I want people to remember? And what I decided that my thing was improving science literacy in this country, improving science education. Because if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that people do not understand science. They do not trust scientists. The explosion of conspiracy theories in our country is quite frankly shocking. And we have come head to head with that through our social medias, particularly our TikTok, where people legitimately think that scientists created HIV, where scientists are hiding a cure for cancer, where scientists are tracking you through the COVID vaccine. And all of that needs to completely end. And as a scientist, I am embarrassed to be living in a country with those kinds of dialogues. And as a scientist, I will make a difference to cut that out by targeting our students, such that in a generation from today, those dialogues will disappear. We will regain a trust in science and scientists. And that's why I made CRISPR Classroom.
Right. That inquiry piece is really important because it forces students to ask questions and, not just come up with an assumption about what you think can happen, but it requires you to dig deeper into your own curiosity and explore solutions into different socio-scientific issues. I'm really excited about CRISPR Classroom and the possibilities because I have a passion for science. And when I was in school, we didn't have anywhere near the access and resources as they do now. It was really just textbook-based learning.
Yeah. Gotta throw that out. That does not work.
Right. What are some things that teachers can do with CRISPR Classroom?
That's a great question. And I'm going to actually feed off of what you just said about students needing to be trained in the ability to, have inquiries. And that is something that is sorely missing, I believe, in the majority of classrooms, not just in the US, but in the world. Oftentimes, up until, you graduate college, you are trained in a certain way. And that way is that the teacher or the professor asks the questions and you have to have the answers as a student. But in real life, that is turned on its head completely.
Right.
Most of the time when you are an adult, quote unquote an adult, are we ever not children? It is your responsibility to be able to ask the right questions, use this critical thinking scientific framework to be able to solve these complex problems where there is not just one answer as the solution. And so in a way, the entire training that we are given from K through 12, K through even through college, misrepresents the types of problems that we will have to solve in adulthood. And so with CRISPR Classroom, the way that we develop our programs it's much less about the students having the right answers and much more about giving them real world experiences, challenging their biases through project-based learning, as well as, again, I've mentioned just meeting a scientist. That just goes so far for the students to be able to understand the real world problems. When we coach our scientists to appear in these classrooms, one of the things that we emphasize is do not just talk about the possibilities in your field, emphasize the problems. I'll give you an example. When I visit students' classrooms, I often talk about a particular gene therapy that is used for the treatment of a hereditary form of blindness called Luxturna. And then I ask the students, guess how much Luxturna costs? Guess, Dr. Mack, how much do you think Luxturna costs?
I don't know. Let's see. $100.
$100. That's very low. Luxturna costs $500,000 per eye. So then I tell the students, do you know who's going to need to be the one to solve that complex problem? Clearly, with these therapies, we have a problem with accessibility. Do you know who's going to have to solve these problems? You are. You are, the students in this classroom. And that's how we bring in scientists to inspire them with the problems that we are still facing today, such that they can be inspired to pursue careers that are able to solve these problems. And so that's our Meet a Scientist program, highlighting those problems, inspiring them to become researchers or, problem solvers. And through our project-based module. So we have a ton of hands-on activities, plug and play lesson plans where the students can actually perform CRISPR experiments in the laboratory. They can also do different types of experiments where they actually use these state-of-the-art bioinformatic tools, designing CRISPR experiments, just a whole bunch of fun projects that are, again, easy, plug and play, turnkey for the teacher, fun and engaging for the student. And I will say now, if you think that these projects are too complicated for your students, that is just not true, because I have worked with hundreds of students and trained them in these advanced methods, and I am absolutely certain that any student can learn this type of technology. And that's what we hope to provide to students and to educators.
Wow, that is amazing. And I'm still stunned on $500,000.
$500,000 per eye. And because it's considered an experimental therapy, oftentimes it's not covered by insurance. So clearly this is a problem. Clearly it's a problem that has to be fixed.
Wow, yes. And so why should school districts, teachers, or campus administrators implement CRISPR Classroom programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say we are currently one of a kind, especially in our Meet a Scientist program. To my knowledge, there is absolutely no other third-party entity or vendor that is basically giving you connections to real-world scientists and allowing you to bring them into your classroom. That is number one. To my knowledge, nobody else does that. We are CRISPR Classroom. We bring scientists into your classroom. The second is that we are real-world scientists. And so the type of content that we develop, you can basically be guaranteed that it connects to the actual science that is happening outside of those classroom doors. And you can't get that with basically any other discipline. You have to have scientists building that content in a way that is accessible and clearly communicated, which, to be honest, scientists are not often trained in being, clear communicators. And that is one thing that we are underlined, highlighted in. CRISPR Classroom prides itself on its ability to take this cutting edge technology and talk about it in a way that is just in plain language, plain English, that anybody can understand. And so that's why anybody should be able to bring CRISPR Classroom into their campus, school, classroom. Meet a Scientist program, nobody else is doing that. Second, we are built and developed by scientists, so our content is cutting edge and clearly communicated.
Wow, yeah, I like that because, typically we go with the standard textbook topics, and we're going to go through ecosystems, we're going to go through genetics or different cycles, life cycles, and so the cutting edge part I think really brought my attention, because now you're bringing in things that are currently happening or currently in place that people can really connect with, and what's happening in our lives today, and not just the standard practices. I know a lot of times when I go support teachers in their classrooms, they're just teaching the standard content that's available, but really bringing in that real world experience. I think that's really important for students to have that aha moment. And I'm hoping COVID kind of helped shape that, that interest in science a little bit too, because of, the virus and learning more about it. Because before it was just a typical, diagram. They understand the replication of how viruses may work. But I think, this pandemic hopefully has shed a light on instruction to really add more real world applications into it. So bringing in, and, just seeing CRISPR technology, I just never heard of it until, I met you. So it's something that's even new for me. So we're always learning and finding opportunities, and then hearing all the different things and impact it can make into our lives. And, cure, diseases. I'm like, wow. So it's like really important to kind of expose our kids to that at a younger age, and not necessarily when they have to go to college to find out, and specifically like, those more detailed technical things. So, it would be great if that part was incorporated eventually into curriculum at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll see that those basic things, like the life cycle, the basic things that the students have to learn, that stuff still needs to be taught. And the teachers definitely have their lesson plans. They are the owners of that classroom. They know how to perform and create engagement in their students. The only thing that we add is we supplement that real world science that it's often difficult for the teachers to access, honestly, because it's buried in primary literature. And who's going to go out and read peer reviewed literature written by scientists? Nobody is. Well, we are. And then we're going to develop content on it for your classrooms. So it is much more a supplement to the classroom that is truly there to inspire, to humanize, and to connect the students' lives to the science that's happening. Because as you just brought up COVID, part of the reason that I think science kind of has taken a front stage, biotech in particular, over the last 2 years, it's because of COVID. We were all personally affected by a virus, and thus the understanding of virology and kind of like the scientific technology behind it all became much more widespread. And so with CRISPR, because it has applications in so many different fields, especially in therapeutics, it is actually surprisingly easy to engage students in this education, because everybody is or will be affected by this technology. And it's actually extremely easy to humanize it in a way that the students understand. We were all touched by COVID, now we understand viruses. Same thing can be done with CRISPR. Because, sad to say, but we've all had lost a loved one to cancer. CRISPR is in clinical trials to be able to cure some types of cancer. We have loved ones who suffer from different immune diseases, different genetic diseases. We have loved ones perhaps around the world who are suffering from food shortage crises. And we all have that personal connection to these problems where in some facet, CRISPR is being tested as the solution.
Wow, that is amazing. And so how can educators find more information about CRISPR Classroom and solutions that you guys provide for schools?
Great question. So anybody can reach out to us at CRISPR Classroom. It'll be at our email, hello@CRISPRclassroom.org. For literally any reason, we're happy to take any inquiries from teachers, investors, advisors, partners, hello@CRISPRclassroom.org. We also have a fun website, CRISPRclassroom.org, www.CRISPRclassroom.org. And we are pretty active on various social medias. We have a lot of fun on TikTok, engaging with different audiences around the world, good and bad, sharing videos and education about CRISPR, as well as being on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Search on a social media at CRISPR Classroom, you'll find us.
Wow, that is amazing. And thank you so much, Dr. Kris. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and, just learning and growing. It's a continuous cycle for us as educators. And so I think this will be a great component for our science educators, our leaders out there, to kind of hear about these opportunities and really connect. And so I hope that our listeners today have taken in some new information, CRISPR Classroom, guys. And so go check it out. Connect with Dr. Kris at CRISPR Classroom. And so I just want to thank you again for joining me today. And it has been such a pleasure, and I can't wait to see more.
Fantastic. It was great to be here, Dr. Mack. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Tech It Up Talk podcast with Dr. Mack, your host with the most passion for supporting educators on using and implementing technology. Be sure to connect with me on the Tech It Up Talk Facebook page and Twitter and Instagram at Tech It Up Talk or at Dr. J.E. McDonald. Now, I know teching may not always be easy, but it sure is fun.